This is a Kanawatsugi joint, or a half-blind, tenoned, dadoed, and rabbited scarf joint. Japanese joinery may seem very complex and difficult, which it is, but these joints are made with simple skills built one on top of another. The skills that go into a joint like this are simply accurate layout, sharp tools, and being able to cut to a line with a saw, plane, and a chisel. All of the joinery is laid out based on a center line. So I'll find the center of my piece of wood, and then I'll mark a line along its length. And then all the other lines will be laid out based on this center line. This allows for any kind of material to be used with this joint. So you can join a square piece to an old weathered post by using this center line layout. It's what makes this joint so unique and so useful. To make sure my lines are accurate on both sides of the joint, I make this story stick in the thickness of all of my little notches. Then I mark 2 lines the length of the joint with the center line, and 2 lines on the outside of the center line that are the thickness of the story stick. By using this story stick, it makes laying out the rest of my lines quick and repeatable. That way, both sides of my joint are a mirror image of one another. I left the joint a little bit longer than it needed to be. That way I can run my layout lines all the way to the edge and then just cut this off to length. When I draw the lines on the end grain, all my layout lines are exactly where they need to be. And now that I've got all my layout lines drawn, I made sure everything lines up, everything's crisp and nice and square and accurate to my story stick. And now I can begin cutting out the joinery. If you want to try this joint for yourself, I have a free diagram with all the measurements available to download, as well as an online course for getting started with Japanese hand tools. All links and resources are in the description below. I often try to get as close to the line as I possibly can, right off the handsaw. This minimizes any kind of finessing work with chisels or hand planes later on. Makes the work a little faster and a little more efficient. For the middle part of the scarf, first I make a series of cross cuts to make chiseling the waist out a little bit easier. Now I can chisel out the bulk of the waist with a 24mm chisel. Then later on, I'll plane to my line to get a perfect fit. Here's where I can start finessing the joint down to the line. This is my favorite tool for the job. It's got a slight angle in the plane so I can get right into the corner, much like a Western style rebate plane or shoulder plane. And while I'm planing, I check for flatness across the entire width of the joint and then just slowly work my way down to my line. If there's any leftover little bits, I can just come back with a really wide chisel and just clean it up with the flat surface I created with the hand plane. Once I've exposed the inside of the joint here, I can now finish the layout lines so that I can cut the inside little notches and grooves that match to the other half of the joint. I laid this joint out with all the notches being the same width as my 6mm chisel here, so that this makes this part, chopping all these little notches, much easier. I just take one pass with this chisel and then let it be. For the small little notches in the front, it helps to create a straight line with a handsaw. That way when I chisel, I'm not blowing anything out, especially the material I want to save. And finally, I chamfer the little corners on the end here. That way when the joint goes together, it all goes together really smooth. The best way to get tight joinery is by having really good crisp layout lines, and then you split that line with your saw, with your chisel, or with your plane. And by splitting the line on both of these joints, when I join them together, they will be as tight as the thinness of that line. So this joint isn't typically used in furniture, which is mostly what I work in, with the exception of some old Ming chairs. Instead of steam bending that curved back of a Chinese Ming chair, they would actually use solid wood joined end to end to make those long curves. A joint similar to this is what they would use. And then there's a little peg that goes in that locks this joint in, so that when these two pieces are joined together like this, it basically becomes one long board. I've worked in a lot of wood shops over the years, and whenever something is cut short, there was always someone who would say, "I hope you brought your board stretcher today." And there's no such thing as a board stretcher, obviously, but this joint is the closest thing you can get to a board stretcher. You can take a shorter piece, two shorter pieces, join them together end to end, and make one really long board. In my next video, I'm doing a project where I'll actually be using this joint to join two long pieces together because my joiner is kind of small. So by using two shorter pieces of wood, I can joint them on my shorter joiner bed, get them nice and flat, and then I can make those two end to end so I can make a long 8-foot piece out of two 4-foot pieces. This joint is really cool. There's so many different applications for it, and it's a fun little practice. Now with one side fully cut out, all I have to do is just repeat the same process on the other side. I find cutting these practice joints to be incredibly relaxing. There's nothing else to think about other than the next line to cut in front of me. And with each one, my sharpness and accuracy has gotten better and better. Don't let these complex joints intimidate you. It just comes down to drawing a line, then cutting to it. And practicing with some scrap wood takes the pressure off of making them. So grab some wood and tools and go try this amazing joinery for yourself. Don't worry about what it looks like. You'll get better every time you try. Just have fun with it.